everyone, so this is the earthworm dissection. It is in the phylum Annelida. It is a segmented worm. I'm going to go over the external anatomy first. So this surface right here is the side that's darker, the side that you can see the darker line. This is the back side, or the dorsal side. The side that is, this is the clitellum right here. That's the reproductive structure. So this is a clitellum. And the end that's closer to the clitellum is the mouth. And so this is anterior, while this is posterior. So on the anterior end, you're gonna have that hole right there is not the mouth. They use that for like pinning. They probably put a rod through it to make it more straight. So that is not the mouth. But you can see that first segment, how it looks like a little lip-like structure. That is the prostomium. And it's a little lip-like structure that covers the mouth, and the mouth is underneath that prostomium. And then this and the posterior end, that is the, oh, there actually is a hole. So that is the anus. And so then the opposite side, so while this is dorsal, the lighter side on the underside, that is ventral. And you can see right here, those holes right there. That is the genital pores, or the sperm ducts. And that's where they exchange the sperm during reproduction. They're hermaphroditic, so they have both male and female organs. And so they attach with the clitellum, and then they exchange the what's it called? The sperm at the genital pores, or the sperm ducts right there. So this is pretty much all of the external anatomy. So we have dorsal, anterior, posterior, the underside was ventral. Then you have the mouth and the prostomium. You have the clitellum. And then you have the anus. So that's pretty much all for the external structures. So when we go to cut, the earthworm is going to be different from most of the others. Most of the others, we always cut on the belly side, the underside, or the ventral side. This one's going to be different. We are going to be cutting on the dorsal side, the back side. So the darker side where you can see that black line, the clitellum is darker. So this is the side we're going to cut. So that is very important. So, here, let me put it sideways. So I'm going to go over the structures. So here we have the mouth. There's an opening right there. We have the prostomium in the mouth. This muscular structure right here, that is the pharynx. So it goes mouth, and then the pharynx. And it's going to be hard seeing the esophagus because it's located under these structures. I'm lucky on the container that I opened. These earthworms are actually dyed with some latex, unlike the ones I opened up last year. So you can actually see things a lot better. So all these little red things are in pairs. Those are the aortic arches, which is the heart, part of the circulatory system that pumps blood. There are supposed to be 5 pairs. Something 1, 2, 3, 4, and I think there's a 5th pair right there. So 5 pairs of aortic arches, and then underneath of it is the esophagus. So like the tube that runs, sorry, it's not focusing very well. This tube underneath the aortic arches is the esophagus. So mouth, pharynx, esophagus with the aortic arches. Then the next part of the digestive system, these are 2 new structures. We have the crop and the gizzard. So this pouch is softer. So this stores the food. That is the crop. This one is harder and more muscular. This one's called the gizzard, and is used for grinding up the food. So mouth, pharynx, esophagus, crop, stores food, gizzard, grinds up food. And then the rest of this tube, that runs the rest of the body is the intestine, all the way to the very end with the anus. And that intestine will absorb all the nutrients that were broken down from the gizzard. This pink line that you can kind of see on the top, that runs the top, is a dorsal blood vessel. And there is a ventral one on the underside too. So there's two blood vessels. So the ventral one, the one on the underside that we can't see, will pump blood, transport blood to the posterior end, and it'll return on the top side. And then the dorsal one, that black line you can see on the top, is that dorsal blood vessel. And so the blood gets returned back to the anterior end from the dorsal blood vessel, because we are looking at the dorsal side, the top side of the worm, the back side. We cannot see the female reproductive organs, so you will not be tested over the female organs. So now the male reproductive organs. So they are hermaphroditic or hermaphroditic or monoecious, so they will have both. Okay, these two white structures, or technically a few more than that. So the larger ones right here, the larger lobes, those are the seminal vesicles. So the seminal vesicles have testes in them, and it's going to store the sperm before it's going to be given to the other worm during reproduction. So this stores it from the testes after it's been reproduced, and it will be given to the other worm. So those are the seminal vesicles. So these two little white ones right here, there's two on either side. Those are the seminal receptacles. And think about the R in receptacle with receive. So it's going to store the sperm, but it's going to receive the sperm from the other worm and store it once it's been received. So seminal vesicles, once it's recreated, will store it to be given to the other worm. The seminal receptacles receive the sperm and stores it from the other worm, because they do not self-fertilize. They fertilize another worm. And like I said, they'll attach at the clitellum, and then I've already cut it open, but I showed you on the other worm, those little two holes, the genital pores or the sperm ducts. That's where they'll transfer the what's it called? The sperm. And another thing I want to go over, since they have segments. So each one of these segments is called a metamere. So each one is called a metamere, segments. But they also have internal segmentation. When I cut it, you can see those little dividers, little compartments. So it has a true body cavity. And these little things, I had to cut through them when I was cutting open. These little lines in there are called septa. Not the setae, but septa. And septa are these just like tissue dividers that create the internal segments, and like puts the coelom into different like segments also. So this is the internal segmentation, and what creates it is the septa. And I had to cut through them to get it open. You can see it all the way down here too. Only other thing I didn't think I covered was that here on the underside, it's harder to tell on a worm that's not alive, but the underside is more rough than the top surface. I can feel it kind of right here because it has the setae. The setae are these little bristle-like structures. You won't be able to see unless you look underneath the microscope, but the setae help it grip to a surface, like in the soil, and attach and anchor it while it moves. And there's like two types of muscles found in the earthworm called the circular and longitudinal muscles that help it contract and expand when they move. But you can't see those muscles. So yeah, you have the setae on the underside. You have the metameres, the segments. Oh, the other one thing I want to go over is you can kind of see it right here. You can see a little waxy covering right there, the little film. That is the cuticle. So this little film right there, that is the cuticle. You go over again. So we have, it's kind of hard to hold it in. So you have the mouth with a lip-like structure to prostomium. Then you have the pharynx. Then underneath you have the esophagus. The first pouch, the softer one, crop, gizzard, intestine. Then you have 5 pairs of aortic arches, the little red things. That's its heart. And the red line, pink line running the top is the dorsal blood vessel, because we're looking at the dorsal side. Then you have the larger ones right here, closer to the crop, are the seminal vesicles. And the 2 little circle ones on each side are the seminal receptacles. You have recepta, which creates the internal segments, puts the body in little compartments. And that's pretty much all it is for the earthworm. Yep, and this is the dorsal side, anterior. The side with the anus is posterior. The underside of the worm that we did not cut into is the ventral side. So the dorsal side is going to be darker, and you can see that dorsal blood vessel, that little line running on the top. And then you have the clitellum, and then you also have the stenotopores and or the sperm ducts right there. So that is all for the earthworm. If you have any questions on it, please let me know, and make sure you use this as a study to help you know all these structures for the lab practical.